think, act, and prosper. You are now tuned into the Money Level Show.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Money Level Show where we think, act, and prosper. Today, we got a guest coming back, and he goes by the name of David Morgan from the Morgan Report. People know him as the Silver Guru. I know him as the Silver Champ, the People's Money Champ. You know, I'm just creating these nicknames for David already, so it's hopefully one of them stick, and then I can get credit for it later on or something. But how you doing today, David?
I'm doing all right. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yes. Appreciate you coming on. So a lot of things have been developing since the last time we came on. I've been keeping up with a lot of your posts on Twitter. I encourage people to go follow David on Twitter. I will leave the Twitter handle below. But you post a lot of insightful stuff, especially and even on the Morgan Report. The articles that you post and everything is very insightful to what is going on in the world and the economic environment. So I just want to jump straight in. So we had a war kickoff, and obviously this war has had a lot of implications and consequences, unintended consequences or however we want to phrase that. But what are you seeing kind of developing from this whole conflict and how things are exacerbated now?
Yeah, if I may be so bold as to just tell everyone that I've done several interviews on that topic, the Ukraine situation, and I devoted for the premium members my thoughts and put it in writing. But obviously, it's war is horrible. War is a racket. I talked about all wars are bankers' wars. The banks usually fund both sides, so the banks came out ahead regardless of the winner or loser of the war. So my thoughts are it's real. I'm trying not to take any sides. I think I'm just as compassionate toward the people of Ukraine as I am the people of Russia and all people that are, subjected to the disruptions that this war has caused so far and probably will continue. I think it's more than the war, meaning, as I said, bankers' war. It's about the change in the financial system. And I think I wouldn't say it's a cover for the changing financial system, but it's certainly a way for the mainstream media to point at war, and neglect talking about the degradation in the global economic system and what's happening to resettle agreements between, let's say, the NATO states and Russia, what we promised is the NATO states promised versus what they did. And also what the agreements are for, let's say, gas to Europe from Russia. So a lot at stake here. No one really wins in a war. And of course, it's unfortunate that the whole thing has taken place, but it is what it is.
Yeah, no, that's one of the things that I've been highlighting to my audience is that these politicians, they make these choices and decisions, and ultimately we get left holding the bag. We're the ones that ended up suffering. I mean, you got people in Ukraine that have nothing to do with these political decisions that have been going on, but they're having to lose their homes. People are dying, losing family members. I mean, the whole food shortages thing, which we'll get into a little bit later on, but the people are the ones that suffer.
Exactly. You're right.
So when you talk about the shift in the global financial system and everything, I'm having a lot of conversations with my audience, my friends, about how now you have these two powerhouses. You got Russia and China, and you got countries that are actually siding with them. I mean, even when you look at the whole OPEC and all of those nations, it look like all countries that we have problems with. And so, and how much energy they control and how much production and exporting they control. So are you seeing like a shift in the way of these countries are fighting back? Like, no, the system doesn't work. And we need to be a part of the table. We need to be at the table making some decisions because we have power, we have resources as well.
Yes and no. A bad answer. I'll explain. So in one sense, it could just be, actors of the global theater and everyone's just playing their part with the ultimate outcome. So as we all know, problem, reaction, solutions, or antithesis and then synthesis. So is it that? I don't know. Could it be that? Absolutely. It appears to me that there's some real pushback, but I don't really know. I'm not, the only ones that really know are the banking elite, the money masters. If they've had this whole thing orchestrated, I think there's too many vectors and too many claims that I can make that there is some real pushback. So let's back up a little bit and look from a longer term perspective. We have the BRICS, these countries that align: Brazil, Russia, uh, India, China, and South Africa. And they have formed their own coalition. And that coalition is really outside of the US dollar system. On top of that, what you have is that the petrodollar was basically protection money from the United States. In other words, Kissinger went over and met with the Saudis and said, look, as long as you accept only dollars for oil, we'll be your protector. Well, that changed recently, where now the US is no longer the protector, Russia is. So that was a huge shift. I did a video or two on that. I talked about it a few times. So we have that in the background as well. Whole world runs on energy, and Russia has no shortage of it. So they are actually in a better position on a net resource basis than a lot of other nation states, especially Western Europe. So that's about as deep as I want to go. We can go deeper. You can ask me anything, but looks to me like, is it orchestrated? Is it not? Most likely it's not, but of course I can't give up on the idea that we've seen throughout all of recorded history, the way it's presented to us, that the bankers fund both sides and everyone's just acting their part. It'll be determined here before too long. We'll know.
Yeah, we'll know who the puppets are and everything. And that's interesting you say that. I didn't know that Russia is actually providing protection for the Saudis now. And I recently read the article where the Saudis were talking about pricing oil in yuan and things like that. And so it just looked like we fell out of favor with a lot of those nations over there. And so it's interesting.
Yeah, if I could interject here, I mean, this, I know that you're free market thinker just like me. And, let's just do a real quick thought experiment. What if let me start with this, the old adage that the first thing that you lose in the war is the truth. Think about this. What if, this is just a supposition or a presupposition, if the Ukrainian people really are being held back from their natural wishes, their, let's say, God-given rights, because of a government that is very much aligned with, let's say, the ideas of Nazis, and that Russia's actually in there, and that's all they're doing is cleaning up this grip that is held over the Ukrainian people. I mean, no one really talks about that very often. Of course, in the subset channels, you might see it from time to time. I'm not there. I don't know. What I do know is most of my life, I've tried to read the left and the right, try to get a balance and not favor one side or the other, always favor the truth. I don't have it right in front of me. And, there's always the one-offs, meaning the example, well, maybe they really are freeing some of the Ukrainian people. Maybe there really are some Ukrainian people that want to move into Russia, all that. But then there could be some Russian colonel or whatever acting badly. And of course, that, gets put on the mainstream press, and it's valid, it's truthful, but did he go outside of his boundaries of what he's supposed to do? All those kind of things interplay. So it's really difficult, especially as it goes on in time, because the guidance gets fuzzier and fuzzier. I mean, if you look at what the Vietnam War looked like at the start, whatever that was, because we kind of took over that battle from France, but as it went from us taking over that till it finally ended, the devastation that we did with these Agent Orange and all these things that were really unimaginable, but really happened. So the point being is that usually wars get uglier and uglier and uglier the further they go in time.
Yeah, yeah, and you know all being fed a lot of propaganda. I mean, this happened with the pandemic, the last election. It's just so much propaganda where it's like, okay, you know, what is the truth, and you do have to look at both sides and kind of just decide what is truth, and kind of find somewhere in the middle or whatnot. Um, so yeah, thanks for saying that. I mean, that's aligned a lot with, you know, how I've been thinking lately, and even approaching this. I mean, because there's so many variables, you know, and then you have the whole thing of people wanting to be discriminatory towards Russians, and you know, all of this, and it's just nonsense. So one thing that I noticed was the whole thing. Russia's been buying gold for a long time. And then Putin came out and demanded payment in either rubles, gold. They considered Bitcoin or whatnot. I don't know how much of that was, you know, how much weight that held with what Russia was wanting for their resources. But I was seeing that they actually linked the ruble to gold. So what does this mean for the gold market? What does this mean for the precious metals going forward?
Well, psychologically, it means a lot. It means that it's got people and even the bankers kind of awake to the idea that, you know, gold is the ultimate money and that's the ultimate settlement. The actual tie to gold has been kind of misrepresented by most of my peers on the internet, and I'm not better than anyone. But first of all, it was temporary to June, and it's already been ended. So it's on my Twitter feed. I knew you were going to ask me that question. I was looking for my Twitter that I posted a day or two ago. I can't find it. I post so much. But basically, it was just proof that the Russian, I'll call him finance minister, I think that's the correct title, basically said we're stopping the conversion at 5,000. The second part that most people don't understand was that was the buy price for Russia to pay in rubles to their interior miners. So they would be the buyer of last resort, first resort for any internal gold mining that takes place. As far as settlement in rubles, my understanding is that the European, Western Europe is still paying for their natural gas and oil in euros, but that euro payment goes to one of the major banks in Russia and moves to the foreign exchange market, converts into rubles, and then it's paid for. So the ultimate price is paid in rubles, but the payment from the standpoint of Germany, for example, is no different than ever. They just send out euros, gets converted to rubles, but it does put demand on rubles. And that's why I think this minister decided to cut this 5,000 rubles per gram, I think it was, took it away, because actually the ruble was strengthening so fast, probably faster than anticipated, that they didn't want to, my take, disrupt the market. It's already disrupted enough, but I think it's important, more of a thought process that, you know, people are waking up, even bankers and, you know, the general public. Wait a minute, they want gold? Why is that? You know, unless you're in our ilk, you don't think about gold as money. I mean, no one in the mainstream hardly ever talks about it. A few times they do, you get articles in the Wall Street Journal that talk about gold as a pet rock. Or, you know, you get Bernanke say, well, gold isn't money, it's just tradition. And all of this nonsense. Yet the truth is that all central banks have been net buyers of gold. I should say all, but most central banks have been net buyers of gold from 2011 till now. So for the last 11 straight years, they keep buying more gold than they sell. So they know it's the money of last resort. They know it's their bedrock foundation if things really get out of hand, but they're not going to tell that to the general public. They're going to keep going with the phony fiat fiesta as long as they can until it doesn't work anymore.
Yeah, I've actually been reading this book lately. I don't know if you read it. It's called The Power of Gold. That book is powerful, man. It gives a lot of history as to how gold has developed as money, and and I can see why. I forgot who said it, but I don't know if J.P. Morgan. Everything else is credit.
Yeah.
Money is gold. Everything else is credit.
Gold is money and everything else is credit. JP Morgan. That's correct.
Yeah, so I can definitely just concur with that. So I've been hearing a lot of talk about the precious metals demand being at I don't think it's all time highs, but it's been highs in the last however many years. I think it's a few years or whatnot. What are you seeing on the demand side? And I mean, I've been seeing these memes about the Comex not not
Yeah.
having
Well,
a.
there's a lot of information, disinformation, and misinformation about the COMEX. I'm not going to sort it all out with you right now, but and thanks for again, Daryl, for reminding me. I will say this on the demand side for silver. You stated it correctly, Daryl. It is in 2020, the demand for silver as an investment just set a new record, an all-time record. Normally, in a very strong investment demand year for silver, you're looking at 300 million ounces, maybe. In 2020, it was 530 million ounces was demanded between institutions and retail investors. Retail investors that buy, 1 ounce coins, 1 ounce rounds, 10 ounce bars, kilo bars, and 100 ounce bars accounted for 200 million ounces of silver in 2020. On top of that, the institutions put about 320 million ounces of silver into the ETFs. So the total 530 is greater than the industrial demand. Never seen that kind of demand for silver for investment ever. I mean, it's unprecedented. How much is it in 2021? TBD, to be determined. We don't know yet. I don't think it's going to be as strong as 2020, but I have a pretty good gut feel because you can get some hints that it's pretty strong, Daryl, which leads to the obvious question. If demand is so damn strong, then why is the price still under $30 an ounce? And that's a question I can go ahead and answer, but it's basically the price for silver is a derivatives price. It's not the real price of silver. And what does that mean? It means if you buy it at the coin shop, you might pay $4, $5, $6, $7, $8 over the paper price to obtain physical silver. Even on a wholesale side, these bars are sold at above the quoted paper price now. So the market's, I think, a lot tighter than most people think, and a lot has gone into the silver market, and there are things behind the scenes I can't tell you yet, Daryl, but hopefully in the next 2 or 3 months when we do our next interview, or maybe I'll call you up and say, hey, let's get it on together. We'll have some information that will be imperative for silver investors, particularly gold investors as well, about what's really going on at these bullion banks and these brokerage houses that facilitate the swapping of and hypothecation of physical silver over and over again. So,
Wow. So you mean to tell me that the demand has increased so much, and the price is still under $30 an ounce, and we're seeing these premiums. The premiums are skyrocketing, and everything. So a lot of silver investors. What would you say to a silver investor in that situation? Would you just say like, hey, we just need to hold on? I mean, and this kind of leads into our next kind of topic, which is the risk of recession. And we know that silver and gold and the precious metals have been a stable form of value, a stable form of money to protect people from these risk-off environments, right?
Right.
And so, what would you say to the silver investor? Just as far as how they should think about their investment in silver. I mean, because obviously, if you're waiting for the price to go to $300 an ounce and and all of that, You may be waiting a long time for some of these things to shake out.
Well, I'd say hold your ground. I would say, feel your conviction and stick with it. I hate to say be patient because, there have been people holding $25 silver for 10 years, right? But I also did a lecture. This is answering your question. I'm diverting a bit, but I did a lecture recently at the 121 conference, mining conference in Las Vegas, and it was all about silver. I haven't done a silver only speech in a while, but based on the total demand curve going out to couple of decades, we basically don't have enough mining supply plus recycling supply to meet the demand as it currently sits going out a few years. So that means the price is going to be squeezed. And that's based on, more solar panels, investment demand staying the same, which I think is going to increase, and your brazing and your catalysts and all the things that silver does increasing at a reasonable amount. And the mining activity remains even or steady where it is now, which means about 850 million ounces mined per year. However, the grades are degrading on some of the larger silver mines, and the oil price keeps going up. So some of these mines at $25 silver aren't so profitable anymore. And the grades they can't control. I mean, sometimes they can. I mean, there's a few mines out there where you can go in a certain area and get out higher grade ore than in another part. But generally speaking, there's a lot of open pit that's disseminated. You can't change the grade. And even in the hard rock vein mining, it's pretty hard to stop in one area and go get it in another area. Point being is that I think the mining activity is not going to be level. I think it's going down. So now that would be a bigger gap. So think of the demand side curve going up higher, and instead of the mining supply being flat, it's actually going down. That would increase the delta or the gap between the supply and demand curve. And again, this illustration that was presented by Mike Watson, who does, Matt Watson, that does independent analysis on a lot of the metals. He looked at investment demand being steady, and I disagree with him. I think as we degrade further into this economic collapse scenario, that more and more people that have the ability to save their money will save in real money, and that will put upward pressure on prices.
Yeah, so everybody hold on.
Yeah, let me add one more thing, Daryl.
Yeah.
The problem with, that I've seen through, almost 50 years now is that people get the silver story. It's a good way to be outside the banking system, on, and they buy too much for them. I'm overweighted silver, but I've been in it my whole life and it doesn't bother me. But so I'd say, keep stacking. I think stacking is the best way for most people. Just buy that extra, $50 a month or $100 a month or 25 or whatever it is. Buy a coin a month, buy a roll a month, whatever your budget allows, and just keep going. But people that go all in because they get excited and understand what's happening and want to protect themselves, and they jump, they bite right away, and they take too big a bite, and silver's flat for 10 years, they get quite discouraged. So you got to kind of look at it from what suits me best, what suits my family best. And again, I think just dollar cost averaging over the long term, saying, like David says, 10% is enough. For me, it's 20%, or it's only 5%. But Daryl, if we were able to get the word out and every American bought two or 3 ounces of silver, that'd wipe out the entire silver production annually, year over year over year. And when you think about that, 3 ounces is equivalent to, $3 as far as what's stamped on the eagle. And that's, it's that much silver. That's not an eagle, but that's not a lot of wealth as far as what the value is currently. In other words, it's $30, we'll say, with the premium. So 3 of those is 100 fiat. And we all know today 100 fiat doesn't buy you a whole lot of groceries. Yet that would wipe out the entire silver supply. So it's vastly undervalued relative to what it's bought in the past. I mean, that used to be a day's wages. And a day's wages at what, 15 an hour is what, 40, 125 bucks or something like that. So really looking at it from almost any aspect when silver is money or valued as money or valued as a commodity that you trade for goods and services, most of history, not the last 100 years, but thousands of years before that, silver has been worth, in today's fiat terms, 150 bucks an ounce.
Mm. Yeah, that's good. That's good. So I kind of want to transition to the risk of recession. I talked with my audience recently about me going more risk off in this current environment. We have the economic impacts of the Russia-Ukraine situation. We have the Fed in a super tight spot with inflation. I mean, inflation numbers came out at what, 8.5%, but I mean, that's a phony number. And then they raised 25 basis points, and now they're coming out saying they're going to raise 50 basis points. They're going to tighten. Money liquidity is just drying up, and that's what I'm seeing. Mortgage rates are going up. People can't afford as much house as they could before when the interest rates were very low. So what are you seeing as far as recession risk? For me, I'm personally taking some money out of the system. And being just more conservative and whatnot. What are you seeing as far as recession risks? It could be the economic collapse. It could be the big one. What do you think?
I think it's bigger than a recession. I start every letter for my premium service, the paid service, with a quote every month. And then I usually write the editorial around the quote. Not always, but I always, that's the general idea. So April of last year, I believe it was, I quoted Elliot Janeway that the next Great Depression will make the last Great Depression, meaning the 1930s, look like a small technical correction. And if that doesn't scare you, nothing will, because people starved in the Great Depression. Now, I'm not saying he's right, but I did use it for impact to get my readers to understand that once you start down, you can't turn it around very easily. So, once you get in a situation where your car goes bad and something breaks, and then you don't fix it right away, something else breaks, and then that leads to something else breaking, and it kind of compounds. That's a good metaphor, an analogy for the global economic system breaking down. Well, it's supply chain. It could be the supply chain. It could be lack of food. It could be lack of fertilizer. There's so many variables. It doesn't matter. It matters in the way of, if you're selling fertilizer or can't afford it. What I'm trying to convey is that the end result doesn't care whether or not it was fertilizer or labor shortage or supply chain breakdown. The end result is there's less of it. And there's less of it the next month and less of it the month after that. And as things continue to tighten. So I think we're going into a depression. I don't think we're in a recession. And the best thing to do in a depression is to be debt-free and be more self-sufficient, which most of us in North America are not. We're used to using one of the best inventions ever, money, to facilitate everything we need. We give our labor for a certain task that we're very skilled at. We get paid according to it, usually. And then we take that vehicle and we use it in the marketplace to get what we need and stuff we want. But that's breaking down. And so I am very concerned that we're going to be in a lot different world a year from now than we are right now. And of course, we're in a much different world today than we were a year before. So I'm not using the word recession too often. I think we're going deeper than that. And it's unfortunate, but I will say it even this way. I think right now we're able to produce just enough. I'm careful how I say this. Just a few years back, the ability to have enough food for everybody existed. It's just the distribution isn't always what it could be. Therefore, there are people that go hungry. But now it's not a matter of distribution, it's a matter of the net resource available. And it may be cut by as much as 20% or something. That's a big number.
Yeah, yeah, especially on the global scale. And I've done like multiple videos on the food shortages, and and I told the audience, you came out on my channel was like, hey, buy food. This was months ago, and so what was developing then that kind of put that on your radar, and then how has it been exacerbated since the whole Russia Ukraine situation? Because it seems like it's way worse than it was before.
Yeah, I sniffed it out pretty much from knowing how, studying economic collapses and looking at that book I reference all the time, The Collapse of Complex Societies. That went through several of them. And then my friend David Dubine, who looks at the solar minimum and the solar cycles, which have a great deal to do with real weather changes above and beyond what the man-made stuff is. And so factored all those things in, I saw it coming quite early. And I really, you're right. I mean, I warned people when it was easy to get, freeze-dried food, and it was pretty abundant. Not that it isn't now, but I think there's not as much available. It's certainly higher price than it was. And so I just saw it coming. Didn't know about the illness at the time. Didn't know about supply chain breakdown at the time, but I did think about it deeply and realized it could be not so much I didn't think about the illness, but I thought about supply chains and how complicated they are and what disruptions could happen. And then you get this currency war, and then we want to go to gold or we don't. Settlement, I won't accept it unless it's in rubles, and everything we talked about so far, Daryl. And it all plays together to be one big cluster, where it's harder and harder. The deeper you go down, the harder it is to get back up. So the best metaphor I can give is, we've got to hit bottom, and we're not at the bottom yet. And the bottom may be pretty scary as far as, what remains, meaning how much food is available on a per capita basis, how many jobs are real jobs, the amount of people that are on universal basic income. A lot of things are changing rapidly, and people don't like change.
No.
They think they do, but no, they want the status quo. They want to be comfortable. They've adapted to the conditions that they see right now, and when they change drastically, rapidly, it's upsetting, as it should be. But people do adapt actually fairly quickly. So I still have a optimism that once we get to the bottom, that we will have a lot more soul, if we could call it that, to the populace at large, where, our word means a lot, our integrity means a lot, our ability to, pitch in and help our neighbor kind of thing helps. I think we're just going to transition from a very materialistic Western hemisphere to a much more organic and what I call it brotherly love, but it isn't going to be that clear a path. There'll be a lot of ugliness as we go down the rabbit hole until we get to the point where we settle out, say, okay, this is all we've got left. Let's accept it. Let's not look at what we don't have. Let's look at what we do have. We've got commitment, energy, people we can trust, and let's move upward from here. And it will happen. And with the technologies that are out there, it could happen rather rapidly. So, there's several scenarios. Let's give you a couple. It could be a real quick, deep, hurtful, painful, scary as all get out kind of a drop. And it could be quick. And then things get to where I said, and we start to build back up. And it could come up rather rapidly because the technology is still available and it's open to, let's say, humanity at large. But that's the optimistic one. I don't see it that way yet, but I'm open to the idea of it.
Yeah, it's that just kind of reminded me of that quote, hard times create strong men, and strong men create good times create weak men create hard times. And just thinking about that, it may take us to get to that point to like for us to even have even stronger leaders, that will step up and kind of just help us, join together, band together or whatnot. It's almost like that first turning piece of the book, The Fourth Turning,
Right.
where individualism's weakened, and people work together to build strong institutions and such. And that's kind of what I'm hearing when you say that. So another thing with the food shortages is the fertilizer farming issue. I was keeping my hand on my finger on the pulse of the Canadian Railway, that whole thing that was developing, and I'm glad it got resolved quick. But it's still looking like the fertilizer issue is going to be even hurt the farming, and next year we may see even more shortages coming up. What have you been seeing in the farming fertilizer kind of aspect?
Well, I'll just add on to you. You're right. And it is degrading. I mean, a lot of the fertilizer are what's called petrochemicals, which means oil. And oil is costing more, so fertilizer costs more. We've gotten away from being, let's say, more in tune with nature. We've outthought it or outdone it with all these chemicals and the idea that we can, conquer nature or whatever. I mean, nothing's really more important than the microbiomes in the soil. I mean, if you really want to get what's really valuable, it's dirt. It's healthy dirt that's got all kinds of organics in it that you can grow healthy food in. And there's ways to do it without petrochemicals. But the commercialization of the farming industry on a global basis has taken most of that away. But that doesn't mean, you can't grow some tomatoes and I can't grow some lettuce, and we get back, to basics. And you don't need necessarily petrochemicals to do that. You can use chicken poop, or you can make your own compost with leaves and grass and all this stuff. And I think we're going to get there. I mean, I don't think everyone's going to have their own victory garden in their backyard, but I think a lot of people that never thought about growing vegetables today will be growing them next year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I actually, when the pandemic first started, I started going out just buying seeds. I don't know why. I was like, I'm buying seeds. And then I went and bought some recently. We recently got about, I think, 7 chickens. And my wife's been starting to, garden and plant some vegetables and stuff like that. So, I mean, I just encourage people to, be able to do that, to stockpile on some things some non-perishables, and things of that nature. I mean, rice, dry beans, all that type of stuff, canned goods. I mean, I was watching the guy, I forgot his name. I believe he's one of your partners at the Morgan Report. And he talked about the canned like tuna and stuff at Costco, like has like a 2025, 2026 expiration date. So I've been buying out those too. I've been buying, I've been buying those up. So David, just to wrap us up, I've been thinking a lot about this, and you kind of mentioned something similar to what I'm thinking earlier. A lot of the system that we know is obviously changing. We know that the baby boomer generation, received a lot of benefits. Their parents received a lot of benefits for fighting the war and such. What does this look like going forward for people in my generation? The millennials. Because I honestly don't think Social Security is going to be around. I honestly don't think a lot of these traditional retirement plans are going to be around. Obviously, UBI will probably be here. What's your thoughts on just how people in my generation can prepare, going forward, for when, we get older, when we get to the, 50s, 60s, or whatnot? Because I think a lot of these systems aren't going to be here.
Well, Daryl, you already said it yourself, and it would be to be more independent. Independent doesn't mean you get, buy all the canned goods you can and sit at the top of the mountain with a gun to protect them. I mean, independent means that you are self-sufficient, and any surplus you have, like if you're a farmer and you get your own, let's say, organic farm for your own family, and you grow more than you can consume in any season, you can some as excess, you give some away to your neighbors or sell it or whatever. So I think really, I want to go philosophical here, and I want to go a little deep, because this is the most important thing, and that is integrity, keeping your word. If you, the millennial generation, speak the truth everywhere, to power, to your friends, to the news media, to whomever, that is very, very powerful. For example, with the war, going back to that for a minute, if we kept our word, meaning what Russia had agreed to with NATO, and we had not gone further than that agreement, there would be no war. So we kept our word, there wouldn't be a Ukraine war. If we kept our word on the gold standard, a Bretton Woods agreement, we wouldn't be in a fiat system for the last 50 years. So this idea that you can make a promise like Social Security and then renege on it just disrupts the entire society. And it's from biblical times. Look, there's a jubilee every 50 years in the olden times, because the way the system was set up was unsustainable, and they knew it. And since they knew that fact, they had this jubilee where the land went back to the original owners, is my understanding. I'm not saying we should do that or not. What I'm saying is, what cannot be sustained will fail. You're right. So be mindful, be independent as you can. I would suggest, finding what you love. I mean, if you got a job and it's a good one, keep working, get your 401k, do your IRAs, do all that. But also have another foot in something that you might be able to do on the internet, or maybe some hobby that you like that you can make some extra income on, because the disruption is going to be far and wide. And the main thing is, and I think integrity is more important than what I'm about to say, but attitude has a lot to do with it. If your attitude is like you and your wife, we're going to get through this. We're going to get through this, and we're going to be closer than we've ever been, because we're growing our own vegetables. We're spending more time together in the garden. You're taking care of the chickens. Hey, wasn't it great to give that extra dozen eggs to the food bank or whatever happens? And that is what really means something. And it's not, how big the bank account. And I'm not trying to put down anyone that's struggling financially. A lot of people are. But my point is that it's that personal integrity that really makes a human experience worthwhile. When you live your word and you can trust everyone that you talk to living theirs. But we as a society have broken down on that a long, long time ago. And we're paying the price for it now.
Yeah, Dave, appreciate that advice. Appreciate those words of wisdom. So your character is going to be very important. Integrity, and being able to be honest. We don't have a lot of honest people in the administration, right? Right now, and being able to have that honesty and that integrity is definitely going to take us far, and it gives us a lot more sense of purpose and stuff. And so, Dave, I want to appreciate you for coming on and spending your time with the audience today. Be sure to go to the Morgan Report, subscribe, check out the Morgan Report, follow Dave on Twitter. I will leave that in the description. I will leave that on the screen, so that you can stay up to date on the things that he's posting. You got anything else you want to share, Dave?
I do not, but remember, there's more to life than money, and really try to connect. I'd say try to connect with at least one person every day. And what I mean by that is take that extra 2 seconds and really look them in the eye and really feel when you say something that you mean it. Like, how are you? We say, oh, how are you, Daryl? And we just say it like we don't mean it. So try to put a little more meaning, try to be a little more present, try to be a little more connected with whoever you engage with. And Daryl, I thank you for inviting me back. It's been too long, my friend, and keep up your good work. You are making a difference. There's nothing more powerful than the truth, and we just got to keep putting one foot in front of the other, and we're going to get through this. We will trudge this road, and we will continue on.
Yes, agreed, my friend. Thank you for coming on.
My pleasure.